this is the story. We pulled it up. So people have the One Love bracelets and symbols, and Qatar was like, no, you can't wear those things. And people are all shocked and surprised they're not allowed to do it. It's the craziest thing to me.
They can't even drink at the stadium.
They banned alcohol, which was more of a controversy, which is great. They shouldn't be drinking alcohol. It's horrible for you. It's horrible for your brain. It shrinks your brain.
But should they be banned from drinking in the stadium?
This is their religion. This is their culture, right? And if we want to be, respectful of them, this is how they do it. So this is the fine line that a lot of people are playing in. But that's more of a controversy than the migrant slave workers that were dying building the stadiums, which
that has nothing to do with religion. Like, that's just the fact that they
depends. Because some religions are okay with slavery more than others. There's also particular scripts in
referring to the Quran.
There's particular scripts that are push for and advocate certain things and excuse certain things.
They recited a passage from the Quran in the opening ceremony, along with like Morgan Freeman and then this double amputee YouTuber from Qatar, and the whole ceremony just seemed so satanic and globalist and creepy. It like sent chills down my spine. I was so disgusted.
Poor Morgan Freeman. How much did they pay him to do it?
I mean,
and he was lip syncing it so badly.
Trying to speak Arabic or something?
No. He had this monologue that was playing around the stadium, but he wasn't saying it live. He was lip syncing to it, and it was really badly done. And it was just like the whole thing was a mix of cringy and evil seeming.
I'm saying like the alcohol thing. I think people should be allowed to drink alcohol. I think I think there
was some special process you had to go through.
Apparently
like you had to apply to be able to drink at the stadium.
Right. Well, you can still drink at bars outside the stadium. You just can't drink on the actual.
Right. But my point is just this is like kind of waking people up to like, hey, wait a minute, what's going on with this country? There are women who have been raped and then imprisoned for being raped.
Yes.
Like, that's crazy.
Because we overturned Roe v. Wade, we're being called out as having draconian laws against women's rights. It's not even the same playing field. Like, it's completely different.
You should see what Saudi Arabia is doing to the Shiites, especially with all that public hangings that they've been doing. And if you look up public hangings, Saudi Arabia right now, you're going to see that there's an influx of this, especially right now, which is absolutely crazy. But this is one of our biggest allies that we're funneling all these weapons and arms to, and having a coalition that's bombing Yemen right now, working with, of course, Al-Qaeda rebels, which a lot of people want to ignore. But even the Associated Press admitted the United States coalition is on the side of Al-Qaeda. And they do little PR ops where, of course, the U.S. troops and the Saudi Arabian troops come in, and then they literally call Al-Qaeda, be like, hey, guys, leave. And then Al-Qaeda comes back in and conquers the territory.
Did you guys see the, I think it was Babylon Bee article? Taliban quits Twitter in protest of Trump being reinstated. That was good. Those guys are funny. Yeah. Well, when you take a look at some of these countries, there was it's surprising to me. I was going back to what I was saying about Qatar. There was a story. It might have been Dubai. Where's Dubai? In the Emirates? A lot of these countries have similar rules, similar laws. There was a woman who was on a work trip with a male colleague, and they hooked up in a room, and then they were like, "Oh, you're under arrest. Like, that's illegal. You cohabitating." There was another story where a woman was on a work trip, and like some guy went to her room and raped her. So she called the police, and they said, "Okay, you're under arrest for sex outside of marriage." And she was like, "What?" And then she goes to prison. Like, it's shocking to me how there are American people and European individuals who go to these countries seemingly believing that they have the same values as the West, and they don't.
They don't believe that.
They just in jail.
They rely on Western self-hatred to avoid responsibility for this. That's what it is. With the World Cup, Westerners can't call out human rights violations in this country because Westerners are supposed to hate themselves for their own so-called human rights violations. And truly, like, the overturning of Roe v. Wade is not even close to the laws you're talking about.
Right.
In fact, our biggest human rights violation, in my opinion, is the fact that we have abortion in this country at all. We kill babies.
John, where do you draw the line when it comes to either respecting the culture or pushing them to change and calling them out for being wrong? How do you navigate this crazy minefield?
That is a very good question. I think that I notice a very disturbing tendency for this like blind American patriotism, George W. Bush style, waving the flag, which I love. I'm a patriot, but I see like this very sad phenomenon now where you've got like middle-aged dads, for example, and they're coming home and they're watching the news, they're in their recliner, and they're hearing a story about how, women are being raped in the Middle East or these terrible things are happening. And then their, son comes in and they're like, okay, Dad, we have to go to the pharmacy to pick up my hormones. And they're just like, be right there, son. And they're like, those Muslims are real savages. How barbaric are they? And it's like, look, rape, murder, abuses of women, this stuff is as old as human history. What is new and what is especially evil is what's going on in this country, which is now you are taking children and you are exploiting them to very evil things. You are doing the most evil thing that could be done to them, which I'm sure we'll get into in the after segment. And that is new. Nowhere else in the world is that happening except the West. And when the West goes and invades other countries, maybe for financial reasons, maybe for oil, ultimately what they're trying to do is introduce things like feminism, introduce things like gender ideology, or even like with our immigration policy, for example. I don't want to live in the Middle East. I don't want to live in Russia. I don't want to live anywhere like that. Terrible countries, but at least those will still be given to their descendants, whereas it is the official policy of Western countries to bring in people from the third world, oftentimes from Muslim countries, to replace the native population of that country. So maybe their countries suck, but at least they'll be able to hand that down to their children, whereas the West can't say the same. So not only do we not have our heritage, we're being taught to hate that, we don't even have our future because our kids aren't going to have the same country that we had. And also, if the kids even are allowed to be children, they're not going to be the gender that they were
sterilization.
supposed to be.
You know what I think? I think a big component of this is that the right has a longer memory than the left, or the left is just outright lying, which is probably the case. This happened to Tucker Carlson. He was talking about this idea that Democrats are bringing in immigrants to, I guess, expand the population, as it were. Chuck Schumer literally said this, like recently. He said, Americans don't have enough kids, so we need, I think it was Schumer said this, right? He was like, we got to bring in more immigrants. And it's like, okay, or we as a country can be like, hey, maybe people should have kids too. Like, I'm down for immigration, done legally and through a normal legal process. And then if we're concerned about population expansion, how about instead of saying abort your kids and sterilize them, you say, okay, maybe some people should have kids and we can have immigrants too. Like, what's wrong with this? Tucker mentions this, that Democrats have explicitly stated they want to bring in immigrants because they vote. They vote Democrat. When immigrants get naturalized and become citizens, they typically vote Democrat. And when they get added to the census as legal residents, or I guess even non-legal residents, that counts towards the census and gives congressional power and presidential electoral power to these states. Tucker Carlson says this, then all of a sudden the media forgets that they were advocating for this very thing, that Schumer advocated for this very thing, and accuse him of being a white supremacist conspiracy theorist.
Yeah, and that's the problem is like, you will have the types who want to make it like this explicitly racial issue. And there is a component to it that is that. But really what it boils down to is like the people who have the deepest incentive in preserving this country, conserving this country, are conservatives. And also people who are white, because this country was virtually like 90% white up until 1965 when they restructured the Immigration Act. So if you look at all the people who are going to want to keep things the same, yeah, they're going to be by majority white people. That doesn't mean that there can't be other groups of people who can't want to conserve the country, keep it the same. But they do have an explicit incentive to import people who are not white from these third world countries because they're not going to really care about things changing. And oftentimes they fail to assimilate even where they'll come and they still want to wave the Mexican flag or the flag of wherever they come from. And it's like they like America insofar as it presents economic opportunities to them or insofar as it presents other types of opportunities, but they don't really value it as like a home or something. And we're so desperate for people to love this country because we're so used to people shitting on it that then they want to have people, oh, well, they're waving the flag, so they're just like us. We can sing Sweet Caroline at the baseball game and get drunk. They're just as American as we are. And it's like, it's not that simple.
Yeah, I think this is their path towards world domination. Joe Biden recently announced climate reparations. Did you guys see this?
Yeah.
$1 billion?
I think so.
And a lot of people on the right miss the point. They come out and they say this climate change stuff is bunk, and and Joe Biden's giving away our money. You know why he did it? The concern right now is that the BRICS nations are expanding. The World Economic Forum has said BRICS Plus is the future. People like Joe Biden want the petrodollar to remain the future. How do you maintain the petrodollar? You give the money to people and tell them, you say, I'm going to give you money. Then guess what happens? These people say, I have this money, it's valuable. You give it to other countries, you give it to Pakistan for gender studies. Then BRICS says, hey, use the ruble or the yuan. And they go, no, I have all these dollars, they're valuable. By giving out this money, the US is trying to force other countries to use the dollar and retain it and maintain confidence in it. That's the real incentive. Because if it ever comes to the point where the petrodollar ceases to exist, or it is no longer the reserve currency, Americans are in for a very rude awakening about the manufacturing base in this country and the things that they don't get from here. So your computers are gone, your clothes are gone, your shoes are gone, your cars are gone. Good luck.
Yeah, that's interesting because, like, you say what you will about China, but they understand that with economies, production equals prosperity. And this country's economy is based on, like, a bunch of really weird things. We've got, like, this debt-based money system, fiat currency, usury, you know, these weird, like, IT jobs and middle managers, but like we don't actually make anything in this country how we used to. And with the pandemic and everything, that really showed where our weaknesses are. And until we start to bring back some of that manufacturing capacity, we're just basically like riding a wave that's eventually going to crash.
Well, this happened, and I don't think there's any way we could go back to what you have been describing. Ever since, of course, Richard Nixon and Henry Kissinger went to China and opened up China to the world, aka made a deal with them saying, hey, we're just going to take all the factory jobs, give you them for cheap slave labor goods, and we're just going to keep printing more money here. The larger question is, how much more money could we be printing here? And there's also going to be a lot of significant economic problems, not just with all this crazy money printing, but more importantly, what's happening right now in China with their zero sickness policy is absolutely insane and will have a very detrimental effect on the American public, mainly because they're not going to be producing. They're not working. They're locking millions and millions of people down into their own buildings without any food, even in many instances where people are dying and killing themselves because they're so sick of the lockdowns, which are being patrolled by drones that are literally flying overhead of them, surveilling them and watching every single one of their moves as they have to live on a QR code system. And now China also is stockpiling a lot of gold. They're also decoupling a lot from the US dollar. So they're making a lot of very significant moves away from the US consumerist system that is dependent on their slave labor. And I don't think they actually, understand the larger consequences of it because they're prioritizing a zero sickness policy, which is absolutely nonsensical. I think it was one person that died in China because of this sickness.
Well, zero COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We say sickness because, again,
I understand.
you get the drift of what I'm saying here.
You see the video of, I think there was like a theme park, and then all of a sudden the police announced there was a COVID
Disney
case.
World in China, people were locked in there unless they had a QR code that approved it. Yeah, they were stuck in Disneyland in China. So this shows you the level of just control freak insanity that these people are willing to go through. Again, Bill Gates compliments this. He says China's doing an amazing job. Bill Gates is advising the Chinese government here. So to me, what's happening in China is a larger beta test to what they want to roll out globally against everyone. And that is total control. And that's what we saw from the G20. That's what we saw from COP 27. All plans to create a system, a social credit system, a central bank digital currency system, a system where, of course, you get followed around by drones and need a QR code of compliance just to exist in society. And I refuse to live in that kind of society.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.